In the headlines, the Court of Appeal has upheld the decision of the Chief Justice Roxanne George that the national vote recount is valid and that the Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield must do as he is told. President David Granger says he will accept whatever declarations from GECOM without condition.
If it comes by day or by night, I am obliged to observe the declaration of the chairman of the election commission.
Hundreds of people flocked the president's former house in Durban Backlands seeking COVID-19 assistance. A Victoria East Coast Demerara woman denies knowing her name was used to file charges against the GECOM chairman, but now agrees. A 5-year-old girl is battling for her life at a GPHC after she was stabbed multiple times by her mother's close friend. And in sport, the Guyana Amazon Warriors team operations manager Omar Khan shares his thoughts of playing CPL in a bubble. With the news, I'm Avinash Ramzan. Thanks for joining us. We started by telling you that the Guyana Court of Appeal on Thursday upheld the decision of Chief Justice Roxanne George that the national vote recount is valid and that the Chief Elections Officer, as an employee of GECOM, must do as he's told. The appeal was dismissed as being frivolous and vexatious and a further abuse of the court. The judgment paves the way for GECOM Chair, Justice Retired Claudette Singh, to call a meeting of the Commission to decide on the way forward. The Chief Elections Officer has refused to comply with the orders of Justice Singh to prepare an elections report based on the recount. The President of the Court, Justice Don Gregory Barnes, said that the High Court properly has supervisory powers to ensure the elections process is protected and that GECOM and its functionaries operate lawfully. The attorneys for the applicant, led by Roysdale Ford, requested a 3-day stay of the ruling of the court, but the application was denied. 2 of the 3 judges granted a 1-day stay instead. Justice Barnes said what it was within the powers of GECOM to decide what to do, as she sought to explain how the process for the results are relayed to GECOM.
When one examines these roles, it appears to be a pyramid kind of arrangement where presiding officers across the country perform their functions at their polling stations and then submit the documents to the returning officers in the district, who then forward those documents to the Chief Elections Officer. And I see that requirement in section Article 177 2B as based on that function, that the Chief Elections Officer is the functionary who is tasked with the responsibility to receive those reports. And I agree that that function is not necessarily personal to the CEO, but relates to his office. But to my mind, the reference on the Article 177 to be that his report, that the Commission is to act only on his advice as presented in his report, is based on that administrative system that is set out, as I've explained it, as I've examined it, the pyramid type of system. So from that, the CEO would calculate the number of votes cast for each list, and from that, present his report. So we come now to the recount. As I've said, it was within GECOM's powers to decide that they wish to use the results of the recount and to so instruct the CEO. The stipulations in Order 60 explain that the CEO was the functionary who was in charge of the recount process. And that process was undertaken at one location and not at disparate locations across the country. This was housed in one location, that process. And so to my mind, those arrangements would enable the Chief Elections Officer to prepare a report for of the final results based on the tabulations during the recount. And so I agree with the Chief Justice. Her analysis of the roles And I believe that it was within the jurisdiction of the High Court to make that determination and to make that assessment. And for clarity, I say under the recount, where all the data was handled in one location under the supervision of the CEO, there should be no difficulty for the report of the CEO on the tabulation to be prepared as requested by the Commission.
Justice Gregory Barnes noted that the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, in its July 8 judgment, correctly ruled that the recount order formed part of the country's electoral laws for these elections and as such cannot be challenged unless by way of an elections petition. According to the Constitution, Justice Singh makes a declaration of the results of the elections after the Chief Elections Officer presents his advice according to Article 177(2)(b) of the Constitution. In his judgment, Justice Rishi Prasad stated that though GECOM must act on the advice of the CEO, his advice must be lawful and any other advice that he gives outside of the recount would be absurd. And since the recount was lawful, Justice Prasad ruled that the Chief Elections Officer is duty-bound to provide advice based on the recount as directed by the Chair of GECOM.
The Chief Elections Officer holds a statutory office and is subject to the disciplinary control, guidance, and direction of the Commission. The legislative scheme so provides pursuant to Article 161 of the Constitution, Sections 2, 7, 9, 13, 14, and 16 of the RPA, and Sections 18 and 19 of the ELA. Section 18 of the ELA, recited in Order 60, specifically provides that the CEO shall, notwithstanding anything in any written law, be subject to the direction and control of the Commission, and, if I may add, only the Commission. Clear and unambiguous language. The advice referred to in Article 177(2)(b) is to be construed to mean that GECOM is not to act on the advice of any person or authority external to the Commission. I agree with Her Honor in this regard. The advice contemplated must be lawful and in accordance with the prevailing law, which includes Order 60 as endorsed by the CCJ. The Commission cannot be expected to accept advice known to be unlawful or lacking in legitimacy and act upon it. Such a proposition is absurd and is squarely rejected.
Justice Priya Sinarayan Bihari said it is disingenuous for the Chief Elections Officer to want to prepare a report based on declarations made before the recount. She ruled that GECOM is correct to set aside the declarations before the recount, and if anyone wants to challenge what GECOM did, then they must fight that battle by way of an elections petition after the results of the recount are declared. In her judgment, she argued for the decisions of the court to be respected.
It is a notorious fact that hostile and volatile conditions pervade the election season in Guyana, more so when cases surrounding the election are dealt with by the courts. In this regard, the words of Justice Bernard in Aubrey Norton, 1996 to 1998, Guyana Law Reports 373, at pages 387 to 388 of the judgment are apt and worthy of recitation. The Learned Chief Justice Bernard stated, "It is incumbent on me to stress that at all times respect for our courts and orders emanating therefrom must be maintained, whether right or wrongly made. Judges strive to dispense justice under severe pressures and less than favorable conditions. Very often they make decisions which are not always popular. It is one of the occupational hazards, and we learn to live with it, provided always that we know we have decided fairly and in accordance with the law. However, we hope, and I trust that I speak for all members of the judiciary, that we do not have to carry the additional burden of political pressure from any quarter. We are here to dispense justice fairly and to hold the scales evenly. To put it simplistically, if the law is on your side, regardless of the identity of the litigant, you will win. If the law and judicial precedent is against you, you will lose. Justice must never be tied to political considerations and affiliations if we, as a democratic nation, believe in the separation of powers. That is the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. The independence of the judiciary must be maintained at all times. Now, as the president of the Apex Court said in Ali and Jagdeo, the law must run its course.
In her judgment, Justice Gregory Barnes agreed that the function of the Chief Elections Officer is based on the administrative system for the presentation of the elections results. The system is that the presiding officers count the votes at the place of poll and then send their reports to the returning officers. The returning officers then send their reports to the Chief Elections Officer, who then tabulates the 10 reports and presents that advice to GECOM. In this case, she said the recount took place at one location and there should be no difficulty for the Chief Elections Officer to prepare his report as requested by GECOM. Leader of the main opposition People's Progressive Party, Barrett Jagdeo, has welcomed Thursday's ruling by Guyana's Court of Appeal in which it upheld the decision of the Chief Justice Roxanne George that the national vote recount is valid. In dismissing the appeal as being frivolous and vexatious, the Court of Appeal also upheld the Chief Elections Officer as an employee of GECOM must do as he is told by the Commission. Jagdeo believes that even in the face of a 24-hour stay granted by the Court of Appeal, that the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM must now move ahead with declaring the winner of the elections in keeping with the recount figures.
We saw the desperation on the faces of people like Roysdale Ford and the Attorney General and the others who were arguing for a stay of the court's decision. Now, the court made no order. The court dismissed their appeal. So effectively, they're ordering, they want the court to stay the dismissal of the appeal. And so we were shocked to see how the court tolerated the nonsensical arguments that were preferred to justify this stay, and the court did not answer the question from Senior Counsel Mendez. He asked pointedly at the end, what precisely are you staying? Yet they got a stay for 24 hours, and we don't know what, until now, what this stay is about, what effectively they're staying. And so I would urge Justice Claudette Singh, as our lawyer pointed out, the elections, when are we going to declare? The lawyer said 2025. Justice Singh is under no obligation to respect any stay when nobody is clear what this stay is about, given that the Court of Appeal unanimously dismissed the appeal of the riggers.
Jagdeo was keen to point out that the Court of Appeal made it clear that Lowenfield must follow the direction of the Commission in preparing his report, which cannot be done using declarations made before the recount.
But all the judges agreed, all 4 judges from both the High Court and the Court of Appeal, that it is the Commission that is empowered in our Constitution to make the decision relating to the elections and declaration of the results. They all confirm that Lowenfield is a functionary, an employee of GECOM. He is not a constitutional officer, and he is subjected to the guidance of the Commission and directions of the Commission. That's a clear finding that the Commission is empowered to deal with the elections, and the court cannot inquire into the acts of the Commission at this point in time, and only through an elections petition after the declaration has been made in accordance with Article 163 of the Constitution.
According to the Constitution, Justice Singh makes a declaration of the results of the elections after the Chief Elections Officer presents his advice. But the CEO, Keith Lowenfield, has repeatedly refused to produce his report using the recount figures and instead invalidated hundreds of thousands of votes to hand the APNU AFC coalition a victory. The recount shows the coalition losing the elections by over 24,000 votes. President David Granger says he will accept whatever declarations from GECOM without condition. A Victoria East Coast Demerara woman denies knowing her name was used to file charges against the GECOM chairman, but now agrees. And a 5-year-old girl is battling for her life at the GPHC after she was stabbed multiple times by her mother's close friend. Those and more after the break. Stay tuned. President David Granger on Thursday indicated he will accept whatever results are declared by the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM, saying his acceptance of the declaration is not conditional on whether it goes in his favor or not. Bibi Katoon reports.
Despite several attempts by his party to have him sworn in for a second term, President David Granger on Thursday said he will accept whatever results are declared by the Guyana Elections Commission. Asked specifically if he would accept the results of the election using votes he considers to be invalid, the APNU AFC leader had this to say.
My statement on compliance with the declaration wasn't conditional. I didn't say if the rain is falling or the sun is shining, if it comes by day or by night. I am obliged to observe the declaration of the chairman of the Election Commission.
He was at the time answering questions raised from reporters at the sidelines of the opening of the new COVID-19 hospital at Liliendale, East Coast, Demerara. The president in the past committed to accepting the national vote recount figures, which showed the opposition People's Progressive Party winning the elections by over 15,000 votes. But agents of the coalition have moved to the court to block GECOM from using the figures. The courts have ruled that the recount results must be used to declare the election's winner. Meanwhile, the president also put to rest claims that he was considering declaring a state of emergency, which will allow him to continue to serve as the head of state in face of calls from the international community for him to concede defeat.
I have not contemplated at this point in time the necessity for an emergency, a state of emergency.
Is that an option to work?
All I'm saying is that over the last 20 months, I've insisted that once the chairman of the Election Commission makes a declaration, I would comply with that declaration. I don't see how a state of emergency or the necessity of a state of emergency arises.
Well, the background to my question, sir, is in the context of your coalition saying that you were insisting on valid votes.
I have insisted on credibility from the start. That is nothing new. But I don't see what that has to do with the state of emergency.
Granger continues to serve as head of the APNU AFC coalition government 5 months after Guyanese went to the polls. The declaration of the election's result has been delayed as a result of litigations filed by his party members, but he maintained that his government do not interfere in the work of GECOM and abides by the law.
I follow the Constitution, I follow what the courts have said, and I await the decision of the Commission.
The coalition has called for GECOM to nullify the March 2, 2020 elections and return to the polls without declaring a winner. GECOM's chairman, former Judge Claudette Singh, along with several court rulings, have made it clear that the elections cannot be nullified before a declaration is made and only after an elections petition is filed. Bibi Katoon reporting for the Newsroom.
We tell you now that a 5-year-old girl is fighting for her life in the intensive care unit of the Georgetown Public Hospital after she was stabbed multiple times about her tiny body by her mother's friend of 23 years. The woman who committed the act ingested a poisonous substance and died on Wednesday evening. Isnella Patwa reports now.
5-year-old Marina Brock of Labon Intention, East Coast, Demerara, was stabbed 7 times last Friday by her mother's best friend. The friend has been identified as 42-year-old Veronica Elliott, a mother of 5. According to Elliott's son, Brian Jaising, his mother suddenly went berserk that day. He said she injured herself multiple times before drinking a poisonous substance. Elliott succumbed at the Georgetown Public Hospital Wednesday night. The incident occurred at Elliott's home in Atlantic Gardens, also on the East Coast. Those who knew her have been left in shock as to what could have triggered the attack on the 5-year-old girl. They said Elliott was known always to be in good spirits and had a very friendly personality. The little girl was stabbed to the back, twice to the shoulder and to her stomach. The child's mother, Bibi Mohammed, told the newsroom during a telephone interview that she is suffering from internal bleeding, but after 6 days in the ICU, the child's blood pressure is finally stabilizing. Mohammed explained that her friend called her over the night before the incident because she was not feeling well.
I never know if she's suffering from a mental disease problem or whatever, because I never see she in that state. I can't really tell you how come this stabbing started, but the child was in the house. I was outside sitting down. And she closed the door, the grill door. She padlocked it with a padlock. And she was in the house walking up and down. But nobody didn't really take this thing for granted to say she would have come out and do something like that. She have a twin baby, right? 2 boys. And like one of them decided to watch into the house and well, like, I don't know what he see, but I hear he started to holler. When I raise up from the hammock and I watch in the house, I see the woman having a bottle of ice and drinking. And, and it was like, I didn't even see if she did cut herself at the same time or what, I don't know. And then after that, I hear my baby holler. When I peep, I didn't see my baby. And the daughter, what she had, the daughter said, oh God, mommy, how you going to do something like that? How you going to choke Marina? And that was all I hear and I know.
Before attacking herself and the little girl, Elliott locked the grill door and the windows in the house. The newsroom understands that relatives had to break a window to get the little girl to safety. Mohammed and Elliott had been friends for 23 years now. Mohammed further explained that Elliott was acting paranoid the night before the incident.
She have a nephew that break in the window, break the lover's window, knock out the bar, and my baby see me from through the window, and I tell her to walk and come to mommy. And she come, and we take her out through a window. And the biggest son now, he put me in the vehicle and bring me to the hospital, the child. When I go, she was in the house walking up and down, up and down, up and down. I tried to talk to her, I tried to tell her to sit down, cool out yourself, talk to me, what, anything bothering you, anything disturbing you or whatever. She keeps telling me how people she up in the zinc, people she through the window.
Meanwhile, when the newsroom visited Elliott's home, her son Ryan said she was always helpful and she would give her last to make others happy. Ryan also said that when he left for work that morning, his mother kept saying that someone was trying to hurt her. Ryan said he and his older brother now have the responsibility to take care of the younger siblings. Little Marina has a long road of recovery ahead and remains in a traumatized state. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isnel Patwo.
Back to politics. One of the individuals whose name appeared on court documents is filing private criminal charges against the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice retired Claudette Singh, has said she did not know her name was being used, but now has agreed. Bibi Katoon reports.
Onita Walcott and 2 other persons have filed private criminal charges against chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice retired Claudette Singh, for misconduct in public office. According to court documents, Walcott, a member of the APNU-AFC coalition, resides at Lot 25, Section B, Victoria Village, East Coast, Demerara. On Thursday, a voice note began circulating in which Walcott expressed shock that her name appeared in the court documents.
That is what I'm telling you, Miss Nicole. I know nothing about it. It's just so me auntie gonna tell me.
A second voice note surfaced from Walcott's boss, stating that the woman's name was used unknowing to her.
She said that how people calling she, telling she about this thing, and she knows nothing about it. She didn't put her name there. So she said she messaged James Bond, asking James Bond about it, but she said he did not answer her back. She says she worked at one of the polling stations in Victoria when it was the day of the election, but she says she know where they put she name in.
The newsroom visited Victoria on Thursday, and a very close relative of Walcott confirmed that she did not give anyone consent to use her name. Walcott's relative said she was on her way to Georgetown to address the issue. 1 hour after the newsroom spoke with the relative, Walcott appeared in a live video on the Facebook page of APNU member James Bond, where she said she did indeed tell her boss she knows nothing about the court case.
As it when she called me, she said, "Oh, Onita, you know what you do? You file charges against the chairman, not the chairman, the judge. You get money to, if the woman sue you back, you get money to file that." And she went out with a set of things. All I said to her, I knows nothing about it.
But she has since retracted her previous statement.
I'm here to let you know that nobody forced me to do anything. Nobody threatened me to do anything. Whatever I did it off my own.
Walcott, along with Lauren Joseph of Melanie Damishana East Coast Demerara and Keith Ondan of Central Amelia's Ward Linden, are named in court documents as having filed 3 private charges against the chairperson of GECOM for misconduct in public office. They are represented by attorney Maxwell Edwards. According to the document, the applicants are alleging that the GECOM chair on March 14th, June 13th, and June 23rd, 2020, acted recklessly and unlawfully when she refused to accept the Chief Elections Officer's report on the March 2nd elections. On each of the dates stated, the CEO presented reports to GECOM attempting to give the APNU-AFCA victory despite the recount showing the PPP won the elections. Bibi Katoon reporting for the Newsroom.
Still ahead on the Newsroom, hundreds of people flocked the president's former house in Durban Backlands seeking COVID-19 assistance. Guyana's COVID-19 cases exceed 400 and the non-functioning COVID-19 hospital is commissioned. A large crowd gathered at President David Granger's former residence at Thurn Drive, Durban Backlands early on Thursday seeking assistance due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Isnel Pato was there and she filed this report.
When the Newsroom visited the former home of President David Granger on Thursday, there were no social distancing rules being observed and some persons were not wearing face masks. And while the Ghana police force was present, they did not manage to disperse the crowd despite constant warnings.
You're asked to maintain the social distance of areas.
Large gatherings are prohibited under the COVID-19 emergency measures, and the wearing of face masks is also mandatory in public. 3 years ago, the president converted the house into an information technology and digital learning center named after his father, Chedwin. Mia Ritchie, Assistant Secretary for the center, explained that there was a miscommunication about what they are doing. She told the Newsroom that the center is assisting persons to fill out forms in order to be granted a food hamper or voucher under the Ministry of Social Protection COVID-19 response. However, persons showed up in numbers on Thursday after a rumor spread that the vouchers and hampers were being distributed at the center.
And of course, you have to understand that people have a need. And if they hear that something is being shared out, whether it's a voucher, a hamper, food, anything, people will show up because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the constraints that we have been under since. So they do come early in the morning to avoid a line. However, they all have the same idea, so everybody's showing up at the same time. Well, this started, I think it was last Thursday, but it's only now that we're seeing this influx of people, because the word is passing on and people are getting wind of some wrong information. However, the fact that they can come here and do an application.
The center embarked on the project to help persons who do not have access to the internet or a computer to fill out the forms online. Richie explained that some of them do not even understand how to fill out the forms.
The community group now embarked on this project to assist the Ministry of Social Protection to fill out forms for the voucher program that the government has rolled out. That's why the people are coming now. We're filling out the forms, taking their information. It goes into the Ministry of Social Protection, and they vet it and call the persons directly to tell them whether they would have qualified or not.
Richie said persons have been coming from the East Bank, Demerara, East Coast, Demerara, West Bank, Demerara, and Georgetown seeking assistance. She also noted that a number of persons have already benefited. Reporting for the Newsroom, I am Isinella Patwo.
And the coalition government on Thursday commissioned the Center for Disease Prevention and Control, commonly known as the COVID-19 Hospital. But the building, which is the former Ocean View Hotel, is not yet in functioning mode and has not been transferred to the government. Additionally, questions still surround its overall cost and the award of contracts. Bibi Katoon tells us more.
Rehabilitation works on the former Ocean View Hotel at Lilendal on the east coast of Demerara began in March 2020, shortly after Guyana confirmed its first COVID-19 case. The empty building was commissioned as the Center for Disease Prevention and Control on Thursday morning. The government acquired the land at the end of April, but the cost was never revealed. All that is known is that the construction cost $1.6 billion. Following the commissioning ceremony, Minister of Public Health Baldy Lawrence was grilled by the media on the arrangement between the government of Guyana and the owner of the defunct hotel GECOM Chair. She said the assets were not yet transferred to the government, but the issue is being addressed by the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
I know that the ministry spoke to Mr. GECOM Chair, and I know that since his consent to help us in the situation, to use the place and so on, that has now transferred to the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and they are the ones who are talking with the receiver and Mr. Rambaran and making all the necessary arrangements.
Can you say how much was paid for the land being transferred to the ministry?
We haven't had any transfer or anything like that. All of those matters are in the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
You said that the legal arrangements have not been started out as yet. Is this
No, I said it's within the purview of the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
Okay. It has not been finalized.
You'll have to speak to the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
Okay. So currently this building belongs to the government of Guyana.
You'll have to speak to the Ministry of Legal Affairs. All right? I don't want to assume anything to you. I want you to go where the persons are dealing with the issue and get the right information from them.
Can you say when it will be up and running?
Well, we're hoping that within a week we can be able to start transfer, because what they have to do is to sanitize the entire place, because once that is finished and the contractors have a few more things to do around the building. So we're looking at a week, and once that is finished, then we will start transferring patients.
Efforts to contact Minister of Legal Affairs Basil Williams proved futile. During his opening speech, President David Granger said public funds were spent on the facility, but he subsequently told reporters that the owner of the building was heavily indebted to the bank and the government does not have a final cost of the project at this time.
As you know, this used to be a hotel. The person who built the hotel was heavily indebted to the banks, and my understanding is that it's in receivership. So in financial terms, we don't have a final a bottom line, but the Minister of Public Health and the Minister of Finance are quite aware of the level of expenditure, and Cabinet is convinced that the expenditure is justified given the health situation.
The center is currently not functioning as it awaits the transfer of equipment and staff from the various COVID-19 isolation and quarantine facilities across Region 4. At the East Coast Demerara facility, there will be ICU rooms and isolation rooms for persons confirmed with COVID-19, as well as quarantine facilities. At some point, the ministry also hopes to add a research institute at the hospital. Guyana confirmed its first COVID-19 case on March 11th. Bibi Katun, Newsroom.
We tell you now that 12 foreign nationals suspected to be Brazilians were intercepted by the ranks of the Guyana Police Force in the wee hours of Thursday at Rockstone in Region 10. The nationals, whom police suspected were smuggled into the country, were heading towards Linden in a Route 94 Lethem minibus at around 2 hours on Thursday. Guyana's borders and ports of entry have been closed since March to curb the spread of the coronavirus, but authorities continue to struggle to deal with the illegal entry of nationals from Suriname, Venezuela and Brazil. Regional Commander Hugh Winter told Newsroom that the police ranks escorted the minibus with the nationals to the Wismar Hospital in Linden, where they were placed in quarantine as they await testing for COVID-19. Commander Winter said the COVID-19 task force in the region is currently handling the situation. The commander said COVID-19 checkpoints and roadblocks were established at Bamia, where persons enter the region from Georgetown, and at Mabura Road, where persons enter from Region 9. Since the closure of the borders to prevent the spread of COVID-19, Region 9 continues to face challenges with illegal border crossings from Brazil. The majority of the recorded COVID-19 cases in Region 9 are imported cases from Brazil. Brazil has confirmed 2.5 million cases of COVID-19 and over 90,000 deaths. Now, Guyana's COVID-19 cases continue to climb, and on Thursday it exceeded 400 known cases. The Ministry of Public Health revealed that 3 more cases were recorded on Thursday from 78 additional tests, bringing the total number of confirmed cases now to 401. Within the span of 6 days, Guyana recorded 49 new cases. The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Shamdeo Prasad, provided Thursday's update.
The total number of tests done is 5,890. The number of persons tested is 4,641, with 4,240 persons being negative. As of the 30th of July 2020, of the 78 tests done, the number of positive cases is now 401, with 20 COVID-related deaths. The number of active cases in institutional isolation is 196. 50 persons are in institutional quarantine, and 3 persons are in the COVID ICU. To date, 185 persons have recovered. 2 new cases today are coming from Region 7, and 1 case is from the city. Tomorrow, July the 31st, is a national holiday where our Guyanese Muslim brothers and sisters will be celebrating with the Muslim community around the world the festival of Eid al-Adha. On a national level, I also wish to state that our Muslim counterparts must be cognizant of the local COVID-19 situation and make the necessary adjustments so that exposure to the virus is nullified. This means that the practice of social distancing must be prioritized and strictly adhered to. No more than 10 persons congregating with visible 6 feet demarcation, and more importantly, alternative arrangements must be in place regarding the distribution of meat to the needy. Similarly, on Saturday, August the 1st, Emancipation Day will be celebrated nationally. The ministry is once again pleading with all to ensure that the COVID guidelines are at the core of these celebrations. You're all aware of the highly contagious nature of this disease and of the continuous increase locally of our cases. Fellow Guyanese, let us not close our eyes to what is happening regarding COVID-19 in the US and even closer to us in neighboring Brazil, which has reported 23,284 new cases and 614 deaths in the last 24 hours.
We tell you now that Guyana on Thursday observed World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. With migrants being the most vulnerable victims, the theme for this year's observance is embracing diversity, reducing vulnerabilities, promoting safe migration. According to the Ministry of Social Protection, Venezuelan nationals are the most trafficked in Guyana as they flee economic hardships back home. The common forms of human trafficking in Guyana are forced labor, sexual exploitation, and domestic servitude. We share with you the stories of 2 survivors, compliments of the Ministry of Social Protection.
Dura, y una amiga me dijo para venir a trabajar para acá, para Guyana. Y decidí, tomé la decisión que sí, pues que venía. Ella me dijo que íbamos a buscar un trabajo de mesera. Y yo le dije, sí, vámonos. Cuando llegué aquí, era en un bar que iba a trabajar. Y no acostumbro pues a esas cosas. Y nos quedamos allí en el bar porque no teníamos para más ninguna parte donde agarrar.
I leave my homeland to go there to take care of a cousin-in-law, but then things turned from good to bad. She started to use me to go out there to bring in money. She introduced me to 3 girls who would help me out in the night to do the business. If customers should come, I should tell them current is 40 euro.
The most common forms of human trafficking in Guyana are forced labor, sexual exploitation, and domestic servitude. These forms exist in the construction industry, hotels, bars, stores, and in private homes. As the Ministry of Social Protection celebrates World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, under the theme Embracing Diversity, Reducing Vulnerabilities, Promoting Safe Migration, it is important to engage the community because victims often do not self-identify. Most of them never come forward to law enforcement.
Hubo una muchacha que se escapó, le dio autoridad a la policía, cuyo de la policía llegó una noche con protector social.
I get to come back home, which I came back home in a car trunk from French Guyana to St. Laurent, and that is when I come out to catch a boat to come home back freely. And when I came home, I went to Ministry of Social Protection, which is counter trafficking in person. I related my story to them, and after doing so, I would have got counseling and get help. Everything falling into place, you know. I more feel like a woman of word.
So citizens, your help is needed. You are our eyes and ears. The ministry cannot do it alone. If you see something, there are ways to contact us. You can call our 24-hour hotline numbers 227-4083 or 623-5030. Email us at countertraffickinginpersons@gmail.com or through direct message on our Facebook page at Tip Guyana. All reports are treated with strict confidentiality.
When the newsroom returns, the financial, weather and bridge reports along with sport.